when a rideshare driver and his elderly passenger crash during a snowstorm. They find themselves trapped in a blizzard of dead phones, eerie sightings, and supernatural dread. But something out there is watching, and it wants them warm, compliant, and to never leave.
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my spookies. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a little spooky in your weekly. I'm your host and narrator, Enrique Couto, and thank you so much for joining me on this soon-to-be very chilling evening. But before we get to that, I have something very exciting to share with all of you. A brand new Strickfield novel, an adaptation of our most recent Patreon series, is available now in a signed edition. That's right, for the first time ever, you can own a copy of one of Weekly Spooky's own Strickfield stories, signed by the author Rob Fields. All you have to do is go to weeklyspooky.com/AprilFool. Copies purchased at that link come signed by Rob and myself, and it goes directly to supporting Weekly Spooky and keeping everything we have going. So I do appreciate the support over at weeklyspooky.com/AprilFool. It's a terrifying story with a bit of a teen horror twist that I know you'll enjoy, and you can find out all that information and more at weeklyspooky.com/AprilFool. Get your very own signed edition while supplies last. But now, as for tonight, they say winter can be beautiful, silent, peaceful, pure. But sometimes the cold isn't just weather. It's a warning. A signal to stay inside, lock the doors, and wait for the thaw. Because in the deep snow, with no signal and no way out, you might not actually be alone. And when something ancient stirs in the storm, warmth may be the only thing keeping it away. So get cozy and get warm. We start the story after this. I Love the Cold by Johnathan Lumpkin. It could be worse, the old woman said. I love the cold. Jared Stiles couldn't see how that was possible. I hope so, he said. You're 100 pounds and didn't bring a jacket. Jared wanted to add that this might have been the first time Ms. Durick had been out of Florida for 60 years, but he was trying to hide his rising panic. The car could start, but it wasn't going anywhere. He felt the impact when the car hit something as it slid down the embankment, and maybe it was hard enough to explain the shattered axle, but he didn't understand how his car got off the road. There was a loud whoosh of wind. He felt the car dip slightly away from the wind, and the wheels slid a little towards the battered old guardrail. Then he felt a hard lurch towards the edge. Jared was in his mid-30s, insurance adjuster by day, and giving strangers rides in his car in his spare time. There hadn't been another car on this road for 15 minutes, and the only way to explain the lurch is if another vehicle hit him, and all he had seen was an owl. It was sarcasm, said the old woman from inside the car. And I did bring a jacket. It just isn't thick enough. Jared had worn shirts thicker than what she was calling a jacket, and the snow had started up again. He was looking at his now useless rear passenger tire, remembering the impact. He remembered approaching a curve and heard wind so loud it drowned out nearly every noise in the car, including Ms. Dureck's screaming as they knocked over the guardrail and started sliding down the embankment. The ice on the road wasn't out of the ordinary, but how easily the guardrail failed was concerning. It was difficult to see through the snow, but 100 feet up, it didn't look like the wreck of twisted steel that he saw in cell phone pictures every day in the office. It looked more like when he tried to use a coat hanger as a makeshift door lock when he was a kid and bent it in one spot. The passenger side of the car also didn't look like it smashed through metal engineered to stop it. It looked like it knocked something out of the way. It hit the tree on that side, which broke the rear wheel, but that was a singular vertical impact. There's normally more horizontal indentation and linear scratching when vehicles hit guardrails. The only time a vehicle's crumple zones shouldn't crumple is when they hit something significantly more crumply than they are. He didn't have a flashlight, and the only light he had was on the front of the car, but Jared was fairly sure there should be more damage. "My phone doesn't work!" Ms. Dureck screamed as she hit her phone against his dashboard. Jared checked his smartwatch. Dead. He pulled out his phone. Dead. The car was still running, which was good, because his headlights were the only thing cutting through the darkness. "I've got charging cables in the console," he said, keeping his voice very calm. "Try plugging it in." Her flight from Jacksonville had landed very late, and she said that she did not trust her sister or brother-in-law behind the wheel. So, she found Jared on a rideshare group on Facebook. Booking clients and not giving a cut to Uber was pretty good when you could get the work. "It's not working," she said, opening the car door to talk to him. "How long before Uber sends someone to check on us?" "They won't," said Jared. "I didn't think you'd want me wasting time picking up other people, so I'm not logged onto the app. Your sister will probably call someone when we don't show up, though." She was quiet for a moment, which was the first time she had stopped talking since he picked her up from the airport. "They gave me their door code," she said softly. "They don't get in until tomorrow afternoon." Ms. Dureck closed the door, leaving Jared to his thoughts in a snowstorm. When he was stressed, he would flip the lid of his earbud case up and down. He didn't think a grown man should have a fidget toy, but sometimes he needed one, and it helped him think. Jared tried to steer his thoughts to something other than 2 dead phones, a dead watch, and a dead earbud case. In the 40 minutes since Jared met Ms. Dureck, he learned a few things. She was divorced. She wasn't any younger in spirit than she looked, and her favorite hobby was complaining. She complained about a vampire podcast. The podcast's host spent a whole episode trying to say that vampires drinking their victims' blood was missing the point. What mattered was that the victims bled to death, and Ms. Dureck thought it was stupid and spent most of the car ride to this point saying so. He wished complaining could be his job, and she had to figure out a way for them to survive until morning. Guys don't stand in the cold very long before they start thinking about making a fire. The tree they hit sliding down was long dead, which had conveniently shattered when it fell over. Dead standing trees are about the best firewood you'll find, almost as good for fires as a lighter. But Jared didn't smoke. He got back into the driver's seat. Ms. Durek was having trouble opening a pill bottle. The car's heater was still working, although hot had been downgraded to warm. Jared suspected arthritis, and he held out his hand. She gave it to him, and he opened the bottle and handed it back. The old woman looked at him, not to see if he was going to steal her pills, but if he was going to judge her for needing them. Jared knew the look. "My mom has bipolar," he said to the front windshield. "She also takes pills that have Lith something printed on them, and she has fewer bad days. Feeling some sad coming up?" "Not this time," she said, swallowing one of the pills. "But too much happy isn't going to help right now." "What kind of happy?" Jared felt the desperate procrastination rise between him and outside as he asked the question. Small talk in a warm car is infinitely better than a snowstorm that will kill them with no help. "Cozy happy? Funny joke happy? Accomplishment happy?" He trailed off. "Nostalgic happy," she said. Something about the way she answered made Jared think she had not been asked that question before. Specifically about dancing underdressed in the snow. "Aren't you from Florida?" "It didn't happen, it just feels nostalgic." She paused for a second. "I'd kill for some cozy happy right now." "Your mom teach you about the happies?" Jared glanced at her and looked back out the windshield. "Some. She tried to keep me at a distance from her mental health, but she opened up when I got older. I can't remember her mentioning nostalgic happy, though." "It's new for me, too," she said.
Did you hear that? Better check the locks on your doors. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
After a minute of trying the dead radio, Jared spoke again. "Besides the car itself, everything that uses a battery is dead. The heater might go pretty soon, too. I think there's a blanket in the trunk, but I'd like to get a fire going if I can." "Do you have a lighter?" "I don't. I have hand sanitizer, which is flammable, if that helps." She pulled a small plastic squeeze bottle out of her purse and handed it to him. "You could try jumper cables, but I doubt you'd get anything going in all this. Why is all our stuff dead?" Jared thought for a moment. "The only thing that makes sense is something killed them, but wasn't strong enough to take out something as big as the car. Has to be something electromagnetic, but that's a problem I can't really worry about until I get a fire going." There had been folk tales in the area throughout the years of disappearances and dead batteries in the area. They went back to early settlers and demagnetized compasses, but conspiracy theories and ghost stories weren't going to get anyone home safe. "I was kidding about the jumper cables. It won't work, and I don't want you to freeze to death or electrocute yourself trying." She was wrong, and Jared was drunk with accomplishment happy and I told you so happy, which he thought were the best kinds. It had taken a while and a lot of sticks, but he eventually managed to get a fire going. The trick is to put your larger logs at the bottom and get a bunch of sticks burned down to coals on top. Keep putting sticks on, and the coals will light the wood. There was enough shattered tree that it should go for a few hours. The snow sizzled against his fire, and it was bright enough that he could see further into the darkness around him. He thought he saw a young woman until he blinked, and she was gone. She was dressed exactly like the missing person Facebook post from a week before. A lawyer had driven home from a late night at the office. Her vehicle was in her driveway, with her phone and bag still in the passenger seat and the driver's door open. But she never made it to the Ring doorbell. Snow had covered up the footprints. The phone had been factory reset, and the cops had nothing to go on. For a brief second, he thought he saw her, except that her hair and face were different. Maybe his mind brought up the missing person photo with the clothes she was wearing at the game. All that was there now was an owl staring at him from a tree. "That's amazing," said a voice beside him. Jared jumped sideways. When he looked back, there was a tiny 100-pound old woman laughing at him. She pulled his blanket over her head, shook it with her arms, and made ghost noises at him. "The woods are haunted, Uber driver. Beware!" She trailed off. "Oh shit," Ms. Durek said. "You're bleeding." Jared looked down where he had landed. There was a rock about where his forehead hit the ground, with blood on it. He knew head injuries bled a lot, and he could see it start to drip off his eyebrow. He felt the spot on his forehead, where it hurt a little, but he wasn't going to die of blood loss. "I'm fine," he said as he got up. "My fault for being so jumpy. Get warm by the fire. I've got a first aid kit in the trunk." He got to the open hood of the car and felt briefly like passing out. He heard the sound of a car approaching and saw the shadows from headlights on the road 20 feet up. The loud wind came again and drowned out his yells for help. As he looked up, he stopped yelling. When the car's headlights hit the guardrail, he could clearly see that it had been repaired. He had hoped the driver would see the guardrail that he had crashed into, but it appeared to have been bent back to where it was before the crash. The driver would have no reason to check on them or call 911. Jared turned around, and that's when he saw her. She was beautiful, appeared to be in her late 20s, dressed exactly like the missing lawyer. This woman was taller, and her shirt didn't quite reach her hip. Her complexion was fairer, darker hair, and was clearly an athlete. She had her hand on Ms. Durek's cheek, and it was the most relaxed her body language had been since Jared met her, even letting the blanket slip from her shoulders and fall to the ground. "You are tired, old woman. Kick snow on the fire, and then we can rest. We don't need it anymore." Her voice was sweet, as if Ms. Durek was a loved one she hadn't seen in a long time. Jared heard an accent, but couldn't identify it. Ms. Durek leaned her head into the hand on her cheek and made a soft noise Jared couldn't interpret, other than sounding happy. The woman met Jared's eyes, and he felt as if his head was a train that had been knocked from its track. He immediately felt the sensation of his knees being cold, and when he looked down, he was kneeling in the snow. His brain felt broken, as if he was playing a video game that lagged. By the time he looked up again, he felt his face gently pressed into the woman's stomach as she ran a hand through his hair.
You're not safe yet. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
She shushed him, brought her index finger to her lips, and kissed it, before touching the corner of his mouth. It was the last real thing he felt as he drowned in the happiness of being loved. He opened his eyes. Jared thought he had woken up from a nightmare he couldn't remember. He was laying in a pond looking up into a snowstorm. There was an owl curled up on his chest, and he had no other motivation in the world than to keep this creature warm. He knew it was the last of its kind, her family hunted to extinction by the bats of Europe. This owl could not make more like it because there was too much risk to be discovered. All around the shore of the pond were people, dancing, naked in the snow. He turned his head to the side and saw the water at the shore start to freeze and the ice coming closer. One of the dancers was the lawyer he recognized from the missing person flyer. She had recently broken up with her boyfriend after he cheated on her and had been planning to move closer to her parents. Jared knew that she was his sister now in a family brought together by this owl. There was an explorer who killed his family after getting drunk 300 years ago. He lit his covered wagon on fire and used the heat to keep warm. He was now a brother in the owl's family. Jared could see the ice forming closer to him. It would touch him soon, but the cold would not get this owl. Something like a purr came from the bird on his chest, and it was the most beautiful thing he had ever heard. He reached out to his right and tried to touch the ice, to keep it from getting closer. Ms. Durick's head exploded in pain. There was also a familiar sensation as the lithium kicked in. It felt as if the wires in her head were being torn out of something happy and violently reconnected where they were supposed to go. She looked down at a half-smothered fire and snow on her feet. She looked up and saw her driver kneeling at the feet of a woman and hugging her tightly. As her brain rewired itself, primitive fear took over. She could see Jared's arms around this woman and the way her brain reacted. She would have been less scared if the woman was a large bear. Jared's fingertips were starting to turn black, and she watched the gangrene begin to reach the knuckles of his right hand. The woman was whispering to him about getting warm and resting. Ms. Durick felt herself about to pass out. She stepped forward, picked up the only weapon available to her, and did the only thing she could think of that might make a difference. She jammed the end of the jumper cables into the sides of the other woman's head. The headlights dimmed, and the engine sounded as if it was going to die. The woman didn't stiffen up or jump away like she expected her to. As soon as the electricity sparked into her skull, the woman slumped and fell to the ground like a building collapsing. Her veins and arteries bulged against her skin. The skin above her veins charred and cracked before opening, and a green fire poured out. Her driver's body was as still as a statue. Tears mixed with the blood from his head in a bright red streak down the side of his nose to his chin, forming a crimson icicle. The wound had not scabbed over, but it wasn't bleeding anymore. His arms were still hugging someone that wasn't there. She tried to lift him to his feet, but he was so stiff that his knee came off the ground. She was crying now, knowing she was never getting rescued. All that was left of the woman was a burning pile of clothes and wispy green fire. It reminded her of the northern lights, and the heat was intermittently and sporadically hot, but didn't seem to correspond to the dancing fire. There was a sweetness to the smell of the smoke that she could not identify. Ms. Durek looked from the dying fire to her frozen driver and knew she would join them soon. It was only getting colder. Her legs couldn't handle the cold, and adrenaline and her mind couldn't handle the death. She sat down with her back against the front of the car. The heat from the engine was nice. Panic was setting in, and the woman's green, burning eyes kept intruding into her vision. The weight of knowing she wasn't going to survive the cold went straight to her stomach, and she vomited. She heard what she thought was a bell and looked to the statue of her driver. There was a tiny glow coming from his wrist, and when she looked at it, she saw a new user welcome message on his smartwatch. I hope you all enjoyed the story as much as I did. This was actually the first story Johnathan Lumpkin has ever had featured on the show, and I sure hope he submits some more in the future to share with all the spookies like me. And an extra special thank you to Crystal Lumpkin for recommending Gary send his story in. Crystal is a true blue spooky, and I really appreciate it. And remember, my spookies, if you want to get your very own signed edition of the Strickfield novel, The April Fool, there's only one way you can, and that's by going to weeklyspooky.com/AprilFool. The book comes signed by Rob Fields as well as myself. Hopefully that makes it just a little extra special. Again, only available at weeklyspooky.com/AprilFool. And my spookies, I want to say such a big thank you. This is the time of year when a lot of people are not looking for their spooky fun content, but you, dear listeners tuning in right now, are the spookies who need the Halloween season all year long, just like me. And I want to say an extra special thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who go to weeklyspooky.com/join and pay just a little bit extra to hear their name at the end of the show. And they are Kate and Lulu, Jessica Fuller, Johnny Nix, Jenny Green, Amber Hansford, Brent McCullough, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you all so much, and if you want to join almost 100 other spookies in supporting the show and getting 2 bonus episodes every single month, all you have to do is go to weeklyspooky.com/join. That's where you can find over 5 years of exclusive audiobooks, creepypasta readings, and a whole lot more. That's weeklyspooky.com/join. But now, my spookies, it's time for me to get out of here. I have to get to working on a brand new Poe reading for this Friday, but you didn't hear that from me. So for myself, for my executive producers Rob Fields, Mark Shields, and Bobbletopia.com, my producer Dan Wilder, and my composer Ray Mattis, talk at you next time.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me.